For the last 3.5 years, I've been attending school at the University of Vermont. Besides the constant cold weather, I can't really complain about the school. I did well in my classes, made a bunch of friends, and I even have a job lined up by the time I graduate. When I reflect on my time at UVERMONT, I can't really think of anything but good memories. I'm proud to speak about most of my experiences here, except for one. It took me a while to become comfortable telling this story, but I think that is necessary. I just pray that whoever is listening to this story never has to go through something like this. This story takes place during the first semester of my freshman year. Like most students, I didn't really know too many people going into the school year. So I made the decision, without my parents knowing, to join a sorority. And by coincidence, my roommate, who I'll call Allie, also decided to join a sorority. Just like me, Allie was another out-of-state student, so she was desperate to find some friends. The two of us ended up rushing for the same sorority. And for context, rushing for a sorority is kind of like tryouts. Rushing for a sorority includes a number of challenges, many of which I can't even speak on. The whole point of rushing is pretty much a way to prove that someone is loyal to a sorority. Not even 2 days into the rushing process, I decided to give up. Even though I had already paid almost $50 to rush, I wasn't comfortable with where these challenges were going. So in my eyes, joining a sorority didn't really live up to the hype. On the other hand, my friend Allie was able to go through with the challenges. And before she knew it, she was only a day away before being accepted into a sorority. In all honesty, I didn't know how she put up with all of those BS challenges, but nonetheless, I congratulated her. I couldn't understand how she decided to keep going on with the challenges, but it was her decision and I respected it. One Friday, she came back from her classes very eager to get started with the weekend. She told me that the following day, which would be Saturday, would mark the end of her rushing challenge and she would finally be accepted into the sorority. I was happy for my friend, but I couldn't help but think what challenge she had to do to finally get accepted into the group. When I asked her about the last challenge she would have to do, all she could do is laugh. But in a way, it was almost like a nervous laughter. And I noticed that when I asked the question, her facial expression changed a little. I could tell that she pretty much just wanted to brush the question off. So I didn't pry any further and I just left her alone. It was a Friday night and both of us finished our classes. So we decided to kill some time by going to the lunch hall and getting some food. And then later going off of campus to see if any parties were going on. Unfortunately, most of the parties going on during that time were pretty dead, which is unusual for a Friday night at the University of Vermont. At the time, most of the people told me that the school was known to have a decent party scene. So we were pretty bummed to find that there weren't any good house parties going on. Disappointed and tired, we both decided to call it a night and we made our way back to the dorms. When we arrived at the dorm rooms, Allie had asked me if I could do her a favor. Allie started to talk about the sorority chapter and the last challenge that she had to complete. She asked me if I could accompany her at tomorrow's rushing event. I didn't know how to feel about this since I neglected to complete all of the challenges. And I feared that the sorority chapter wouldn't even like me there since I wasn't part of their group. Allie affirmed me that it wouldn't be an issue if I accompanied her to the rushing event. I still had no idea what was going on, but I took her word for it and I told her that I could make it. I could tell that Allie was excited that I agreed to go with her, and with that, we both went to bed. I woke up the next morning and the first thing that I could think about was the sorority rushing event. Even though I gave Allie my word, I was still a bit nervous. I was mainly nervous just knowing that sororities and fraternities treat these rushing events very seriously, and if you're not a part of their group, they look at you differently. Anyway, I spent the first half of my day doing whatever I needed to do for school. For the next few hours, I worked on a bunch of homework assignments and ran a few errands before I had to go to this event. And before I even knew it, Allie and I were getting ready. At the very last minute, Allie told me that the event was formal, so we had to dress up for the occasion. After about 30 minutes of me trying to find the best clothes to wear, we finally made our way out of the dorms into the event. After walking a few minutes off of campus, I quickly realized that this event was just another house party. As we walked up the front steps of the door, I could hear the music beating through the walls, and we didn't even have to knock because there were already two men standing at the front entrance. They must have known that Allie was a part of the sorority, and they let the both of us in without any issue. As soon as we walked in, I was immediately surprised when I realized that this wasn't for the sorority alone. From the look of it, it was a mix between one sorority and one fraternity. I wanted to leave almost immediately, simply due to the fact that it was crowded and the music was too loud. I wanted to tell Allie that I was ready to leave anytime that she was. But not even 10 minutes after walking through the door, I couldn't find Allie. I lost her amongst the crowd of people and just assumed that she was catching up with some friends. As the party went along, I met a few familiar faces and we decided to catch up. Even though I was no longer a member of the sorority, I was surprised when they still treated me the same way. As the night went along, I spent most of my time having casual conversations with some of the people, and what seemed like a sketchy idea at first turned out not to be so bad at all. But there was still one thing: I couldn't find Allie. At one point in the night, I was talking to one of the older sorority sisters. While we were talking to each other, one of the frat brothers offered us some drinks. I declined his offer, knowing that I shouldn't take drinks from any person that I didn't know. He quickly walked away, and I continued my conversation with the sorority sister. As we continued to talk, I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. I finally found Allie again, and from my perspective, it appeared that she was stumbling up the stairs as she was being led by another person. This was my first time seeing her ever since we walked through the door, so I told the sorority sister that I'll be right back to check up on my friend. I made my way across the sea of people and arrived at the bottom of the stairs. I knew that if I called out Allie's name from the bottom of the stairs that she wouldn't hear me. The party music was just too loud. The hallway that led up the stairs was incredibly dark, so I turned the flashlight on my phone and made my way up the stairs. I got to the top of the staircase and I was surprised when I didn't see Allie. Matter of fact, I didn't see anybody because all of the lights were turned off. I pointed my flashlight in both directions of the hallway. When I pointed my light at the left side of the hallway, I could barely make out a light coming through the crack of the door. I called out Allie's name, but to no avail, there was no response. I took one step closer in the direction of the door, and almost immediately the door cracked open. I watched as the tall figure of a man made his way out of the room and rushed past me. I didn't shine my light directly on the person, but I just knew off their stature alone that it was a man of about 6 feet tall. I walked closer to the room that the man just left out of, and when I opened the door, I felt a wave of panic when I saw Allie lying on the floor. She was weeping uncontrollably, and I automatically assumed the worst. By this point, I knew that the party was over for the two of us, so I helped her to her feet and we made our way out of the party. I could tell that Allie was coherent, but she was definitely a little intoxicated. I held Allie's hand as we walked our way to the dorms. In the middle of our route, Allie just broke down in tears. Unfortunately, what I feared most is what happened. I didn't know how to respond in the moment. I was at a loss for words. All I could do was just give her a hug and tell her that I was there to help. When we got back to the dorms, Allie was still in shock. I didn't know if I should ask about it, fearing that I would make it worse. The only question that I thought to ask was who did it. She was conscious enough to describe the person, and as she talked, I realized that the person she was describing was the same one who offered me a drink. Allie chose not to go to the police nor the school about this incident, out of the fear that no one would believe her story. This was definitely one of the most tragic experiences throughout my entire college career, but unfortunately this event taught me two things. This taught me that I could easily have been Allie in that situation, and 2, always be safe when going out with friends, because you never know what could happen.